So PHP, as you know, is a recursive acronym for PHP Hypertext Preprocessor. So, and it is yet another scripting language which is widely used uh, after JavaScript. Okay, so we can use PHP for client-side scripting, as well as we can use PHP. Predominantly, PHP is used for server-side programming. Fine, as an alternative to the Java stack of server-side technologies like Servlet, JSP, and all. Fine. Okay. So what all do we have in a PHP file? So definitely, apart from the PHP code itself, the PHP script itself, we can have normal text, we can have HTML tags, we can have CSS part. Also, we can have the script, I mean the JavaScript. So since HTML is allowed, in HTML we can use the script tag and we can embed any JavaScript file, or we can even write the JavaScript itself in the PHP file. Okay, so all these things are allowed in a PHP code. And as I told, your PHP code will get executed on the server, and as a result, like in the case of servlets and JSP, when you submit any request, you get the response in terms of an HTML page. Similarly, in case of PHP also, we are expecting a HTML page in response. Fine. Okay. Now, what all PHP can do? So all those things which were possible with the help of JSP and servlets on the server side, the same things we can do with PHP as well, since it is also a server side technology, right? So we can generate dynamic page content. So this is a feature that we can that we can use on the client side, right? To generate dynamic content on the page is definitely going to be useful on the client side, like JavaScript was able to generate dynamic pages, right? Then PHP can create, open, read, and perform all the operations which are related to file when it is used on the server side. Okay, like any other server side technology. Also, we can collect and use the form data. We can collect information from an HTML form and send it through a request, and then uh, we can process that information on the server side using another PHP code. We can also create retrieve cookies in PHP also. Later in the uh, session we are going to see about that also. We can definitely, being a server side technology, we can interact with the database and send and receive data to the third tier of our web applications that is related to databases. So we can add, delete, and modify any data from within the database. Okay. Definitely access control is also provided by PHP, no different thing in that. And also we can encrypt the data using PHP. So this is an additional feature that we have in PHP, right? We can keep the data encrypted. Done. One important thing, the feature that we see with PHP is the output page. That means the HTML page which we get as a response for any request, right? So the response is not at all limited to an HTML page only, right? In case of other server-side technologies, we get a HTML page in return for any request, right? In case of PHP, we can also expect image files, PDF files, Flash content files, right? All those things we can expect as response directly, not like other server-side technologies. They also provide these media like images and PDF, but those have to be embedded on a HTML. It is not sent as a response directly, right? So PHP allows to provide images, PDFs, and whatnot directly as a response. Fine. So this is a major advancement that PHP provides. Okay. Talking about the features. So being open source technology, it is freely available and we can download it and use it from the official resource php.net. Second thing is it is platform independent. So no matter the code is developed on whichever platform, Windows, Linux, Mac or Unix, it can be used on any other platform without any change, in the functional change or without having a look and feel wise change, right? So that is a pure platform independent technology. Another important thing, it is compatible with most of the servers. There are certain servers like you can see Microsoft IIS, right? It is a web server which works on the Windows platform. Okay, so unlike that platform specific servers, PHP is compatible with almost all the servers. Again, PHP will support both type of databases, SQL and NoSQL type, so no restriction regarding that as well. And PHP is loosely coupled, loosely typed. So what is loosely typed? We know that we don't require the variables to be declared with a type or the variables to be bound with a type, right? That is called as loosely typed languages. So PHP is one of them. Again, PHP is easier to learn, and since it is lightweight when it comes to server-side programming, it becomes more efficient on the server, right? So these are the features of the PHP language. Let us move to the basic syntax of any PHP program. The PHP script will start with a less than question mark and PHP placeholder, right? And it will end with a question mark and greater than sign, right? Always remember. And this PHP script that you enclose in these placeholders, you can embed the PHP script wherever you want in the entire document, right? If you have an HTML document, you can place the PHP script anywhere. Okay, so here's the syntax of PHP that you can have. Apart from the setting of the cookies, so if we are using cookies, then the PHP script will be before the HTML tag. Okay, but apart from that, if you are performing any processing, so all of that will be a part of the HTML document only. Okay, fine. And obviously the default extension for any PHP code will be .php. So this is a simple example of printing a hello world message on a HTML document. So the same, okay, firstly, to print out anything on the HTML page, we use the echo statement and we mention the message in double quotes. If we have to print any variable, we will mention that variable without a double quote. And if we have to mention the variable's value with some static text, then in that case we have to put that variable in this double quotes only. Okay, we'll see certain examples, then it will be more clear. For now, just remember echo is used for printing value on the HTML page. To compare it with JavaScript, what we used to do, instead of this placeholder of PHP, we used the script tag. Okay, and in the script tag, we use the inbuilt object document to refer to the current HTML page. and the write function, right? Uh, to print anything on the HTML page, right? So just to compare the two scripts. Okay, how do we create variables? The rules for creating variables in PHP are uh, no different than any other language or any other scripting language, right? It is just the same. The only difference is for any variable in PHP, the variable name should be preceded by a dollar sign. Okay, that is the only change. Okay, okay. So, like any other language, variable names in PHP will start with alphabets or a underscore, right? It cannot start with a number, definitely. And it can have any alphanumeric combination from small a to small z, capital A to capital Z, which is followed by a numeric value if it is required, right? And also variables are case sensitive, and you can see that these two variables will be differently treated, right? Okay, fine. Okay, so how do we initialize variables? Simply create the variable like we have here $txt is a string variable since it is carrying a string. uh, $x is a numeric variable, $y is a floating point variable, right? So as you can observe, we don't have a type for the variables, but whatever value the variable carries, that becomes the type of that variable. Okay. Here we have just displayed the values of those variables one after the other. So echo $txt, echo the break tag just to print the other value on the next line of the output page. Then we have printed the value of x, again a break tag, and then the value of y. Fine. How do we use a static text with some variable value together? So we have a variable txt which carries the value department of computer engineering, and we have echoed some static text with the variable's value. So this is how we can use the variable when we are printing its value. Okay, fine. If we have to print it separately, we can even do that. Just in that case, this $txt variable will be outside the double quotes, and in that case, we will have to concatenate the static text part with the variable's value. So how do we concatenate in PHP? We'll have to put a dot in between them, right? We'll see in the subsequent examples, we'll be seeing that also. Any doubt by far, anyone? These are all basic things, so we are moving ahead pretty quickly. Any doubt, anyone? Okay, fine. A simple example of adding two numbers through the PHP script. So we have declared two values, n1 and n2, two variables, having the value 5 and 6, and we are just computing their addition and storing it in a third variable, and we are displaying the value of some variable over here. Right, simple. Yeah, this is important. The scope of variables, right? So one thing is that we can declare the variables anywhere, anytime in the entire script. As and when we require, we can declare the variables. By declaration, we mean that simply assigning the value. So here you can see in the last program, we haven't declared the variable as such, but we have simply uh, initialized it directly, right? instead of separate declaration. So there is no separate declaration in PHP. We are simply going to use it. But wherever we want, we can simply use the variables, initialize them and use them. Fine. But the scope of the variable is very, very important. I mean, the part of the script in which a variable can be used, that is called as the scope of the variable, right? So there are three scopes in PHP for variables: local, global, and static scope. Okay, we'll be seeing that one by one. Okay, so global scope, firstly, you can see that we have declared a variable over here, and by default, if you declare any variable outside any particular function as a part of the PHP script, then that variable automatically has a global scope. Understood? So if we try to use that variable inside my function, any of the functions, like so, firstly, uh, in PHP, we will have to create functions in this way, right? We have to use the keyword function, then the function name, and then the parenthesis and the argument list if at all it is required, right? So we are trying to print the value of x inside a function over here, right? But since x is having a global scope, it will not be accessible, right? Here we are calling the function just to display that statement, and immediately after that we are again accessing the value of x over here. So we'll find that x value will be printed over here, but it will not be printed when it is used inside the function. So you can see that the output uh, for the first time when it is printed as a part of function, you cannot observe any value, but for the second time we are getting the value 5 for x, right? So in simple words, any variable which is declared outside a function will always have a global scope, and it can only be accessed outside that function, right? To put it up in a simple language. The very opposite is local scope, right? So here in this script, we are having a function in which we have created a variable, and there itself we are trying to print it, right? So here obviously it will get printed. But when we are trying to print the value of x outside the function, definitely it won't be accessible and it will not print, right? So got printed for the first time, but not for the second time. Okay, pretty simple. So when a variable is declared inside the function, it has a global scope and we cannot access that variable outside the function. Okay. Global keyword. Now this is important. See, I have two variables, x and y, having their respective values 5 and 10. But despite of they being global, I want to access them inside my function. Earlier, they were not accessible, right? In the previous example. But if I want the global value of these two variables to be accessible inside my function, then I use the keyword global, right? And if I declare these variables with the keyword global inside my function, then I am able to access the global copy of those two variables. And then I can perform any operation. So here I am performing their addition and storing the result back inside y. So when I print the value of y outside my function, right, you can see the output will be visible, right? So with the global keyword, we can access any global variable inside the function. Okay. The other way would be if I want to access these two variables without using the global keyword, obviously I'll have to pass those variables as argument, right? When I call the function, right? But if I don't want to do that, the alternative way is to do this, okay? Because I get the reference for the global variables over here. Okay. Static. So as the name suggests, any variable which is declared as static, its value will be retained. Its value will be preserved even after the scope is over. Scope of the variable is over, right? So if we see here, uh, the variable number is declared inside the function add1, right? So the scope of this variable by default is this function body. But if we declare that variable as static, then we are able to retain their value even after the function has ended. I mean, the body has ended, right? So that is the use of static keyword. So if we try to execute this script, you will see that we have a, I'm using the W3 schools editor. And if I try to run this script, you will see uh, 1, 2, and 3 will be printed. Yeah, one below the other, right? Because each time I call the add function, the current value of number is getting incremented and it is being returned, and we are printing it out, right? Okay. Moving to the comparison operators that are offered by PHP. So all the operators that we have been using in the languages that we have studied up till now, uh, the operators and their use remain the same, right? For example, if you use the equal operator, it will return true only if the values of x and y are equal, numerically equal. The only additional operator that we see is the identical operator. Now, when we use a triple equal to sign, it is a identical operator, and it will only return true if the values of both the operands are numerically equal as well as they have the same type, right? So only then it will return a true, otherwise it will return a false. Not equal to remains the same. Uh, Greater than, less than, greater than equal to, less than equal to, all of them are working in the same way. Okay. Any doubt by far? Anyone? Any confusion? Okay, fine. So the next point in PHP is to see the conditional and looping conventions. No different conditional statements, the same if else, else if ladder and switch case we can use in PHP also. Looping statements, we have the same looping statements, while, do while, for, and for each, right? The other variant of for. Syntax, you can see no change in the syntax as well, putting the condition as a part of if statement, and then will be followed by the statements which are to be executed if the condition goes true, right? Else the statements to be executed if the condition is false, right? Whatever it is. The same thing, if there are more than one statements inside the if, we will enclose all those statements in curly braces. Otherwise, no need. If a single statement is to be printed, no need to put the braces. The same rule that we have seen for other languages. Else if, uh, simple condition for the if as well as for the else if statement is expected, and which should be followed by a else, right? Obviously. So here what we are doing, we are having a variable day, right? And in that variable, we are storing the current day, right? With the help of date function, which is an inbuilt function in PHP, we are passing small l, right? So what this uh, small l will give us, it gives us the current day, right? Today is Thursday, right? So it will go in the else part and it will print out it's a working day. So there are many other character constants like small l, we have small d, which is going to return us the numeric value of current date, that is 20th, right? If we use capital D, it is going to give us the first three letters of today's day, right? So if you want, we can simply execute it and check it out. Yeah, so it is going to consider the today's day, which is Thursday, and since it is going into the else part, it is printing out it's a working day. If we use small d, as I told, it will print the numeric value. So it will print 20 and then it will echo whichever statement it is relevant. Okay, we have to print it, right? Echo. See, you can see here, it's printing out 20, that is today's date. If I use capital D, it will print the first characters of today's day, that is Thursday, first three characters, THU, right? So why am I demonstrating all this? Because since you are going to appear for MCQ tests, both for INSEM as well as for your EndSEM exam, the university exam, so you need to know all these things. Perhaps you might get a question for choosing the right option, right? Okay, moving ahead. Switch case, we have a switching variable over here, considered as a switching variable, favorite color assigned with the value red. Switch statement obviously works on basis of that variable and then goes into the appropriate case and executes it, right? Nothing changes at all. While loop, entry control loop as we know it. So a condition is expected in the while loop. We are going to, if the condition is satisfied, set of statements will get executed. And when we end the iteration, we are expected to change the counter variable, right? The condition counter variable, right? Either to increment it or decrement it, right? Do while exit control loop, right? It will execute the body at least once, as we know, and we will have the condition at the time of, we will check the condition at the time of end of each iteration. Fine. For loop, again, the same way, we are having three parts. The number one part is initialization of the counter variable. Number two is we are testing the counter variable, or we are providing the looping condition. And number three, we are using the unary operator either to increment or decrement, or the counter variable, I mean. And then we are printing the statements. I mean, we are mentioning the statements in the which are to be executed in one iteration of the loop. Fine. For each, so we have seen this in Java as well, right? Generally, when we don't know what is the size of any data structure, in that case, we use the for each, right? So here in case of for loop, if we are sure that, if we are sure about the terminating condition, then we use the normal variant of for loop. But if you are not sure, we can use the for each loop, right? So what we do here, whatever data structure we are trying to access from. So here we are trying to access from an array. So how do I create arrays in PHP? I'll simply use the function array and then provide the element value as arguments to the function array, right? So that will create an array, and a reference to the created array will be stored in this variable colors. Okay, so colors will be representing that array. Okay. Now, if you are trying to access elements from this array, uh, for each for each elements in this colors array, we will access one element at a time, and we will storing that element in this variable value, for example, right? So this is the format in which we use the for each. The name of the data structure from where we are fetching as, and the name of the variable in which we are putting one element value at a time, right? And we are printing it as a part of the iteration.